Let me tell you what I love about Lightroom as a photo editor. I was introduced to it about 10 years ago, and when I first discovered it, it was kind of pricey and I really didn't want to spend the money on it. So instead what I did is I went online and I found free photo editors online. And they were good for a while, but once I got used to them, there were things I thought to myself that I wish I could do to edit a photo. You know, I could only do so much with the editing, and I just felt it left the photos wanting a little more. Then when I decided to give Lightroom a try with the 30-day free trial, which they still have, I got totally hooked. I mean, I was totally addicted to editing my photos. So for one thing, it was far more powerful than some of the free programs. Now, having said that, today there is a really great free online photo editor called BeFunky, and I've done a video on that, and I use it from time to time, and it's really great. It is powerful, although to unlock its best features, you are going to have to pay a subscription fee. And so then the question is BeFunky enough for you, or do you want to upgrade to Lightroom? And Lightroom, so the next thing it has going for it, so first of all, it's more powerful typically than the free programs, but it's far simpler to use than the more complex programs such as Photoshop. Anybody who's just getting into photo editing probably does not want to be using Photoshop. Photoshop is incredible, and particularly for graphic designers and others, it's really great, really powerful. But what they've done with Lightroom, since it is made by the same people who make Photoshop, it's made by Adobe, they've taken the best tools for photographers and put them into Lightroom so that we don't have to get overwhelmed with Photoshop. And most photographers who use Photoshop, they do most of their editing in Lightroom, and then they send the photo to Photoshop to do some specific thing, and then they send it back to Lightroom, and that's kind of where everything lives. So Lightroom has those two things going for it. It's really powerful, but it's not nearly as complex as something like Photoshop. So let me show you just quickly how I use Lightroom and some of the things I like about it. Now, I was out with my family the other night. We were driving home. We had gone on a picnic in the county, and driving home, I noticed, I just got a brief glimpse of this field as we drove by. It was actually on like a side road, and there was just a little gap in the trees, and I saw the hay bales and I saw the setting sun, and I just kept driving. It looked beautiful, but I kept driving. And then my conscience ate away at me, telling me to turn around, go back, take a picture, until I finally did. And now, it turned out that when I went down the side road, there was really only one bale of hay there. It was not nearly as dramatic as I hoped it would be. I found it was a real struggle with the sun because it was so intense. If I could have stuck around for another 15 minutes or half an hour, that would have been great. But I had 4 kids and a wife, one of the kids being a 2-year-old in the van. So they didn't want to hang around forever, just waiting for the sun to set a little bit more. But this is why I love Lightroom, because I bring my photos into it, and then and I take a photo that I think is pretty good to begin with, and then or even a photo like this, which I feel as though really lacks a lot. I think it could be a lot better. And the question is, what can I do with editing to make the photo better? Or what could I do with editing to put the finishing touches on it? So with this photo, I'm doing a little more correction than I normally would. But just notice, for example, on many programs where you go to editing programs where you try and brighten a photo, you get this. You brighten the photo and the entire photo gets brighter. So notice what's wrong with this photo. To begin with, the foreground is too dark and the sky is too bright. And this is like a nightmare for photos. When you get photos like this where it's like nothing is right. How do you get a photo that's too bright and too dark at the same time? If you watch my other videos, maybe you'll come across an explanation of this somewhere. But essentially, the sunlight is just so intense, it drives the whole photo down into almost a silhouette. So is there anything I can do? I mean, if I brighten the photo, the sky gets too bright. If I darken it, the foreground gets too dark. I mean, the sun looks neat, but what about the rest of it? So what I do is I go down to the highlight slider and I drag the highlights down, and notice the only thing really being affected is the sky. So I can just darken the sky or any bright part of the photo with the highlight selector. And then I go to the shadows and I can brighten the foreground. And all of a sudden, I get a photo that is way brighter looking than it was. Now, it's starting to look a little bit flat, like you can tell that I've edited this. I think that there's kind of a look to it, like this is not quite natural. So I think if I put a little bit of contrast back in the photo, it'll look even better. And now I don't like what the contrast is doing to the sun, because where you find contrast is in the darks and the brights, and you're just trying to make it a more extreme contrast between the brights and the darks. So instead, because I don't really want the brights affected so much, I'm just going to bring down, I'm just going to bring down my blacks to add a bit more punch into the photo. That's a little too much, but something like that. And then we start to get some realistic kind of contrast back. I could play with the texture, adding a little more texture to the photo. I don't think I quite want to do that with this photo. I could add some clarity, which is similar to texture, but if you play around, you'll see the difference. I could add some vibrance. I actually think I like that bit of vibrance there. I think maybe I'll add a tiny bit of texture. Now there's all kinds of other things you can do here. They get to be a little bit advanced. If you understand anything about noise, grainy noise in a photo, there is noise reduction here that can help get rid of that if you're shooting at higher ISOs. You can add sharpness to your photo. You can add a vignette to your photo. Oops, sorry, I've hit the wrong button. This is not vignette. The transform tool is really cool for straightening out lines with buildings, and I'll do a tutorial on that sometime. So if you like vignettes, you can do some fine tuning once you put your vignette on there and kind of soften the edges and that kind of thing. Make the vignette more round or less round. All kinds of things you can do. You can even add some grain to your photo if you're the kind of person who wants to put grain back into your photo instead of getting rid of the grain. But anyways, this is just a quick demonstration about what I love about Lightroom. Actually, there's one more thing I want to show you. See this little white dot of lens flare there? Actually, first I want to get rid of the grain that I added. Okay, so I really don't like that dot. So I go up to this tool here, and what I do is I just click on the dot, and then what it does is it finds a background or finds a piece of the photo that is similar and then kind of clones it and gets rid of that bit of lens flare there. I found that to be a real distraction to the photo. So now look at that, and of course we can compare the before and after and get rid of these tabs, and then look at the difference in that photo. I could even crop it a little bit. You notice on the left side of the frame there's something there that's out of focus. I don't know if I was too close to some grass, if I had my hand on the camera and my finger just started to go in front of the lens a bit. I'm not sure, but I could crop the photo and get rid of that. I'm not going to do it right now, but so Lightroom is very powerful in what it can do toward transforming your photo, taking a photo that maybe didn't turn out so great and you understand why, and then you go in and use the tools to fix it, or just putting the finishing touches on your photo. Let's, for the fun of it, look at this before and after over here. So you can see that, generally the picture started out okay, but it lacked a lot of warmth, and that was one of the things that I was able to do. Maybe I'll show you that real quickly. So you've got the temperature slider up here where you can warm a picture up, cool it down. Obviously, I'm being extreme here to show you what it can do, but you can play with the tint of the photo as well. And you will find that correcting the color of your photos is something that you will have to do quite a lot with editing. So there is Lightroom in a nutshell. I'm going to do all kinds of tutorials helping you to see all the details with the different tools that you can get, and the real magic that you can get in transforming your photos.